Chapter 7 deals with marriage and nurturing. And there are many issues related to communication in the marriage that we want to be aware of. Now, it's clear from the research that good communication interactions or positive communication interactions are central to encouraging closeness between marriage partners. It is also essential to enhancing marital stability. It is also something that tends to increase marital satisfaction. And in terms of people who have successful marriages, research has found that there tends to be a positive to negative ratio in terms of the type of interaction of 5 to 1. So basically, for every 5 positive interactions that a married couple has, there is 1 negative interaction. And these kinds of issues tend to predict whether or not people will find success in their marriage. Generally speaking, if people tend to engage in more positive communication, what that leads to are partners who are happier in their relationship, which can also lead to more positive communication. And there are several things that partners in a marriage can do to enhance the positive communication aspect. So as I've mentioned in previous chapters, we can give a lot of positive feedback to our partners. So we can tell them that we care about them. We can express affection. We can give them affirmation about their ability to do a good job at their place of employment or in the relationship or as a parent. We can be a source of support for our partners when they are going through a stressful period. And so communication is really something that is very central to the marriage relationship. And in fact, when people do not communicate very much, and when they tend to communicate in a negative style most often, that tends to predict less satisfaction in their marriage and also less stability in the marriage. One of the major things that occurs in many marriages is the issue of dialectic differences playing out between partners. These dialectics can influence the course of the relationship and definitely influences communication within a relationship, and they are definitely worth paying attention to. So to begin with, we have the dialectic between autonomy and closeness. Autonomy can be described as the needs that both partners have to have an independent sense of self, also to feel like they can direct their own behavior or control their own activities. However, closeness tends to be related to having intimate conversations, cuddling, close time, sexual activity, and things like this. Now, although we may start out a marriage or a relationship with lots of time for both autonomy and closeness, things evolve when you have children, and of course there is less time in a day to achieve the desired levels of closeness or autonomy that may make the relationship as strong as it could be. For example, your textbook provides an illustrative case where we can look at the real-life demands that take place when people have children in the home. And they give an example of 2 partners coming home from work, and they're thinking, oh, it would be so wonderful to have a very detailed adult conversation about some kind of a topic, world politics, or whatever you like to discuss with your partner. And of course, this is something that both partners would really appreciate after getting home from a long day of work. However, when you actually get home from work, you may have your toddler demanding your time. You may have a 10-year-old who needs to be shuttled to soccer practice or who needs help with their science project. And so you may be in a situation where, although you want the closeness that is involved in a very intimate conversation or sexual activity or things like that, you may actually find that at the end of the day, both partners are out of energy and there doesn't really seem to be time left. And then there's the issue that perhaps at the end of the day, if there is 20 minutes left before people have to go to sleep to get up for work the next morning, they may just want the 20 minutes to themselves to read a book or to unwind. So we can see how this need for autonomy and closeness can come into play both in terms of people having different needs. So perhaps your need for autonomy is not shared to the same level by your partners, or perhaps your need for closeness is more intense than your partner's, right? So we can see how that plays out in terms of autonomy and closeness, but we can also see how it can be very challenging to achieve the desired levels of autonomy and closeness when we look at the complexities that are inherent in a normal family life. There is also the dialectic between openness and protection. So when we refer to openness, we are talking about being honest about various issues, being emotionally vulnerable, about revealing information to our families or our partners that may have us looking a little bit more realistic in terms of our tendencies as humans. On the other hand, we also desire protection, and protection deals with being closed or safe. Protection also includes protecting ourselves by not revealing information to people that would not be appropriate. Protection is especially apparent to the extent that marital partners desire privacy, or if they maintain secrets from one another, other family members, or from non-family members. One of the theories that has been developed to look at openness and protection in relationships is the communication privacy management theory. In this theory, there are several ideas that are discussed. So, for example, boundary permeability is often the level to which people give access to information for others involved, either with the family or people that are outside of the family. Relatedly, linkages are those connections that are formed through allowing others inside of a private boundary. On the other hand, ownership deals with people who have access to the private information. So what tends to play out here is that you may have a situation, for instance, in marital relationships, where a marital partner maintains privacy and secrets from the other marital partner. And in this case, we would say that that marital partner is surrounded by the boundary. Okay? And that boundary has basically no linkages to the partner. And so that individual who is keeping a secret from their partner basically has sole ownership over the information. And given this scenario in a marriage, we would expect that this kind of ownership of information would result in decreased closeness and connection between a married couple because of the fact that there is a fairly low degree of openness, especially with regards to that particular issue. However, it is also likely that privacy and secrets may be held by a marital couple as a unit. So, for instance, privacy and secrets may actually, in this situation, enhance the bonding between a marital couple because they construct collective boundaries through the linkages in terms of who they share the information with. And they may also become comrades, as it were, in adversity. So they're both really working to protect the secret information from being exposed. So, for example, in families where one marital partner has a drinking problem or addiction problem or a gambling issue, they may actually try to keep that secret from other people in the family. And the couple may actually keep that secret together. So let's say one partner has the problem, the other partner knows about it, and that information stays within the couple. There's a fair degree of openness within the relationship about that information, but there is a lot of protection with regards to other family members or other people in the society knowing about the issue, right? So in that sense, they really are joining forces, in a sense, to keep that information from being revealed to the outside society. And people may keep information from being revealed for any number of reasons. Perhaps they're worried about legal issues, perhaps they're worried about social judgment issues or being excluded from certain social networks that may be important to them. So this theory really allows us to look at the ways in which openness and protection can play out in the course of a relationship and how it is that people's needs for these types of dynamics can influence relational closeness. We also have the need in relationships for novelty and predictability. And novelty deals with things that are new, things that are exciting, things that we perhaps haven't experienced before, whereas predictability deals with the way in which our relationship is structured around a stable type of interaction. One of the things that tends to characterize newer relationships is the experience of novelty. And as the relationship develops over time, the couple will establish certain norms and regulations or rules for how they relate to each other. So over time, people tend to develop more predictability about what will happen in the relationship, what their partner may be doing or not doing, and generally how things will progress in any given day. But the importance of novelty should be underscored in terms of a relationship. And in fact, we need to work to infuse novelty into our relationships later on once we have the predictability of a set schedule. So we have children, and the children have feeding schedules, and they have sleep schedules and school schedules, and we make sure that these schedules are kept so that there is an optimum outcome for the children in terms of development, right, and stability. On the other hand, it's very wise for couples who have very predictable scheduled lives because of family to take away some time for themselves. So even if it means one night a week, you go on a date with your partner to a new restaurant or to a park for an inexpensive picnic or for a walk down a nice road or next to the water. It's very important that people maintain the manifestation of novelty in the relationship so that people do not become bored or so that they do not feel as if they need to seek novelty outside of the relationship. Ideally, we want to be able to seek out most of our major needs from our partner. And of course, there will be some needs that may not be met by your partner. So maybe you have certain, social needs, or maybe you have a hobby that you're very interested in that your partner does not share. Clearly, you can go outside of the relationship to explore that hobby. However, it is very important that people stay connected in their relationship. And one of the ways that people stay connected through exciting interactions is this issue of novelty. And it underscores the importance of us weaving novelty back into our relationship if we tend to be in a relationship that's highly predictable. On the other hand, it underscores the importance of establishing predictability in a relationship that may be very novel. So novelty and predictability, both very important parts of a marriage and one of the major communication dialectics. Also, there is a dialectic between positivity and negativity. And basically, positivity deals with our desire to evaluate our family members in a positive way. So positive affirmation, encouragement, praise, things like that. Whereas negativity tends to refer to our likelihood, or the likelihood that we will evaluate things about our family members or our partners in a negative way. So positive affirmations or positive views of our partner would be those views that we perceive about them that are favorable. So things that we really like about their personality, things that we like about their character, things that they do on a regular basis that we evaluate favorably. On the other hand, negativity deals with some of the less desirable behaviors that we find that they do. So perhaps your partner is not the best housekeeper. That could be a type of a negative evaluation. Perhaps your partner has a lot to learn about dealing with conflict. That would be another type of a negative evaluation. What's interesting about the positivity and the negativity dialectic is that research has found that married couples were more satisfied if they had both positive and negative perceptions of their spouses, but that they were more likely to weight the positive perceptions more importantly than the negative perceptions. So what this relates to is the idea of positive distortion. And Pearson, in 1992, first discussed this idea of positive distortion. And positive distortion tends to deal with the idea that we tend to try to enhance the behavior or the actions of someone else. And we tend to make something look more positive by the way that we perceive it than it actually is, or more positive than other people may evaluate the same behavior. So, the communication dialectics include autonomy and closeness, openness and protection, novelty and predictability, and of course, positivity and negativity. Marriages can be stable, and marriages can also be satisfying. So, does a stable marriage make a satisfying marriage? Let's discuss this. For the purpose of this class, we will define stable marriages as those marriages that endure over a long period of time. And we will define satisfying marriages as marriages with which both people in the marriage evaluate their satisfaction level at high in the marriage. In 1992, Pearson integrated the study of stability with the study of satisfaction across married couples. And Pearson studied couples who had been married for between 40 and 70 years, quite a long time. And what she identified was that there were 8 factors that tended to be associated with satisfied couples. And given that these marriages lasted for between 40 and 70 years, we can also assume that these marriages were also stable marriages. So, some of the factors that were associated with satisfied couples included lowered expectations, unconditional acceptance, positive distortion, becoming one or joining in the marriage, keeping their individuality or remaining two, sexual satisfaction, the ability to cope with conflict, and persistence. In other words, what this suggests is that those couples who survive marriage and report that they were happy to talk about their marriage and were satisfied in their marriage expressed that they actually had realistic and lowered expectations regarding their spouse and what the relationship could do for them. The interesting thing about this finding is that it tends to contradict previous research which has suggested that happy couples tend to view each other through rose-colored glasses. So when you view your partner through rose-colored glasses, basically you tend to enhance your perception of their behavior and you tend to minimize the existence of negative traits. But what Pearson suggested is that not only do people tend to have a realistic view of their partner, but they also tend to emphasize the positive views of their partner. So these are not the people that were just in denial about their partner's issues, but they were realistic about their partner, and on the other hand, they also engaged in positive distortion, which helped in terms of the satisfaction of the relationship and the, of course, stability of the marriage. And what's interesting about these findings is that partners who are more maritally satisfied tend to be so when their partners perceive them positively as opposed to negatively. And this is regardless of how people actually see themselves. So if I see myself as fairly positive and my partner sees me as fairly positive, I would expect to be satisfied in that marriage. If I see myself as negative and my partner sees me as positive, I would expect to be satisfied. However, if I saw myself as positive and my partner saw me as negative, we would then expect that there would be less satisfaction in that marriage. So generally what this research is suggesting is that the positivity bias goes a long way in terms of ensuring that people are able to have both a stable marriage and also a marriage that they evaluate as satisfying. Now we are going to discuss some of the types of stable marriages that exist, and we're going to go through some of the details that characterize these types of marriages. Stable marriages tend to be characterized by a high intimacy and a high satisfaction rating. The first of these types of stable marriages is that of the vital marriage. The vital marriage is a marriage where spouses are really exhibiting the ideal marriage because they share true intimacy and they really find their greatest satisfaction in life with their other person. So these would be the people who think that they have met their soulmate, and because of this they are able to really have a wonderful life because they have this person with them. Another type of stable marriage is that of the total marriage. Total marriages are those kinds of marriages where the spouses share true intimacy and they find their greatest satisfaction with each other, but they are also very highly involved in each other's activities, including outside work. So although they are similar to the vital couples, who are truly satisfied and they find their greatest satisfaction with each other, the vital couples may engage in less activities of the other person's life, their partner, outside of the relationship, whereas the total couples will tend to have true satisfaction with each other, true intimacy. However, they also are very involved in each other's hobbies, activities, and even perhaps professional interactions. These are the two major types of stable marriages. And in the next slide, we're going to look at another type of marriage. There are also stable marriages that tend to be characterized with low intimacy and low satisfaction. One of these types is that of the conflict habitual marriage. These types of marriages tend to center on disagreements or tensions. These kinds of tensions may manifest in the communication behavior between the couple, which can be characterized by nagging, fights, violence, quarrels, sarcasm, being condescending, and possibly physical violence. Another type of a stable marriage that is characterized with low intimacy and low satisfaction is that of the devitalized marriage. The devitalized marriage is primarily focused on the duty to maintain the relationship. These may be the individuals who stay together because society dictates that they should stay together, or they may stay together simply because they have children together and they're trying to maintain the duty that they feel that they should be fulfilling as a good parent or as good parents. And the devitalized marriages, as the title suggests, tend to have a very established lack of romance, and it really is centered on fulfilling expectations rather than enjoying one's life in terms of appreciation of love and romance and all of those things that many people tend to associate with happy marriages. Another type of a stable marriage is that of the passive congenial. The passive congenial marriages provide stability for the couple, but they do not really expect a large extent of feelings of love, and this is primarily because these people who are in the passive congenial marriages are able to direct their energies elsewhere away from the marriage. And in fact, people that are in these types of relationships may direct their extra energy towards their work or towards other social relationships outside of the marriage. So these are some other types of stable marriages: low intimacy and low satisfaction. Communicating closeness is an essential part of happy marriages. And to the degree that people communicate in a close or a distant way, it tends to lead to perceptions of intimacy. So, for example, if you disclose more to your partner about your feelings, your thoughts, what's going on with you, various events that are important to you, then we would expect that you would also experience more closeness with your partner as well. On the other hand, if you have less disclosure with your partner, then we would expect that you would also experience less closeness with your partner. So, in terms of increasing intimacy or closeness, some of the things that we can do in order to increase intimacy is increasing the amount of activities that you participate in with your partner is also a way to increase intimacy. When we do things together, like exercise or cook together or go on vacations together or do hobbies together, what we are really doing is really telling our partner that we choose them. We choose them for those activities in our life that we have a choice on in terms of what we do and who we hang out with, and that we want to be with them and we want to participate in interactions with them that are fun and in doing each other's activities. So let's say you like to go and exercise a lot, and let's say your partner is very into going to the theater. If we are able to participate in the activities that our partners love, then what we're demonstrating to them is that we care about them, we support them, and that we want them to influence us and that we want to share time with them in an interdependent relationship. Also, if we want to increase intimacy in a marriage, we can increase our demonstrations of support. So, support can be demonstrated verbally by talking about various issues that you know your partner may be struggling with. You might ask them how their day was. One of the major predictors of marriage satisfaction, and I think I mentioned this in a previous lecture, is the review of the day. So couples who tend to talk about their day together tend to have much more satisfying and stable marriages than people who do not debrief at the end of the day. So just in terms of asking your partner, how was your day, dear? Did everything go okay today? Were there some issues? Doing those kinds of things demonstrates support, and everybody feels better when they know that their partner is supporting them. We can also increase our emotional sensitivity. Emotional sensitivity deals with being able to assess how our partner is feeling by looking at their nonverbals. We might also increase our emotional sensitivity with regards to how we discuss various issues. So for instance, if you tend to be the type of person who gets very hot under the collar during a conflict, then it might behoove you to start looking at developing more of a calm strategy during conflict, because what being calm does is it allows us to talk to our partner with emotional sensitivity rather than beating them up verbally because we're angry or hot under the collar. And it also allows us to create more intimacy in our relationship, because when we have a conflict, we can learn that through the conflict we can work it out together as a couple, as a partnership, and through that you actually build more strength in the relationship, because you start to learn that no matter what comes our way, we can bind together and we can handle it and we can make it through. Also, sexual intimacy is a definite way to increase emotional intimacy. Now, have you ever heard the phrase that women give sex for love and men give love for sex? It may sound fairly straightforward to you, and granted, sexual interactions between men and women are not this simple. But what that phrase or that saying does point out is that the way in which people achieve closeness, the way in which men and women achieve closeness, may be different. So for women, it may be that they want to engage in sexual intimacy when they already feel emotionally close to their partner. All right? So women want to have interactions that are physical with their partner when they already feel close. So they've had a wonderful conversation at dinner, or they experience that their partner was extremely supportive during a difficult time. All right? Those are all types of emotional closeness experiences that may lead a woman to feel like she wants to engage in sexual intimacy. On the other hand, men often tend to view sex as a way to create emotional intimacy. Let me repeat that. Men often tend to view sex as a way to create emotional intimacy. All right? So if your partner, your husband, is trying to achieve a level of emotional closeness with you, he may initiate a sexual interaction in hopes that you can achieve some kind of emotional closeness. Now, if you have a wife who is feeling distant from her husband and needs a really good conversation to feel emotionally close to want to have sex, and you have a husband who is also feeling the distance, but he wants to initiate sex in order to achieve closeness, you can see how those different orientations can sometimes cause complications in these types of interactions. The reason that I'm describing the differences between men and women and intimacy and closeness is because you may be able to better understand why it is that you behave in a certain way under certain circumstances and why it is that your partner behaves in a certain way under various circumstances as well. So this knowledge allows us to be more conscious of how it is that we view closeness and how it is that we think that closeness can be created. And if we realize that we might have different views of it, then we can try to open up the communication lines. We can talk about these issues. We can talk about how it is that we can increase our activity level together, how it is that I can increase my support of my partner. What does my partner need me to do so they feel supported? In fact, you could even get explicit with them. You can ask them, what do you need me to do to demonstrate support for you? You might be surprised at what you discover. These issues also relate to emotional sensitivity. Obviously, if we can demonstrate to our partners that we care about their feelings and we're sensitive to their feelings, then we will enjoy more closeness as a couple. And also, closeness relates to sexual intimacy. And obviously, engaging in more activities together, demonstrating support, and demonstrating emotional sensitivity will lead to greater sexual intimacy in a marriage. As we have mentioned before, self-disclosure is a major component of closeness in a relationship. In general, when people disclose more, there tends to be more closeness in the relationship. Now, it's probably not surprising to many of you listening today that women tend to disclose more than men. Perhaps it's just the nature of women liking to create emotional connections and having deep emotional conversations. But what's interesting about this is that men who disclose more to their partners are actually more satisfied than men who do not disclose very much to their partners. So what this points out is that although women tend to naturally disclose more, it may be a benefit to men to work on disclosing more to their partners because research suggests that it tends to lead to higher satisfaction. What research also finds is that when there is a gap in disclosure, there tends to be a lower satisfaction level in the marriage. So for example, if you tend to be someone who does not like to disclose a lot of detail about situations in very much depth, and your partner tends to be someone who likes to talk about every single detail in the situation with complete depth, this gap in disclosure could lead to less satisfaction in the relationship. The other thing that's related to disclosure is the type of disclosure that one shares. So, research has found that people who disclose positive information tend to be more satisfied than people who disclose negative information. So, for instance, a positive disclosure may include something like, "Hi dear, did I tell you how great it was that I came home and the house was completely cleaned up? That made me feel so good, and I just wanted to let you know that because I hadn't told you that before." That's a very good example of a positive disclosure. And obviously, as we've been talking about all semester, positive communication tends to bring about more satisfaction in a marriage. And so we can see the relationship between positive disclosures and more satisfaction. Now, in terms of self-disclosure, we have the idea of emotional bids, which we want to talk about. And emotional bids include a marital partner's direct or indirect request for attention, interest, conversation, or emotional support. And Gottman, in 2001, suggested that these kinds of emotional bids are really at the heart of marital satisfaction. So, one type of emotional bid includes that of turning toward. So, let's say, for example, that you wake up in the morning and you say to your partner, "Gosh, such a beautiful day today." Okay? That statement, you telling your partner, "Wow, it's such a gorgeous day today," is actually an emotional bid. And what you're trying to do is basically request attention from your partner. And the response that you get from your partner based on that statement may fall within one of three categories. The response may be a response that is oriented towards you, away from you, or against you. So if you come out in the morning, pour a cup of coffee, and you say, "Gosh, honey, what a beautiful day it is today," and your partner says to you, "Gosh, it's the nicest day I've seen all summer," then that would be turning towards, because in this situation, we see that the partner acknowledges you and what you say, and they respond by meeting your request for attention, and they confirm what you said and agree with you. Now, if your partner responds by ignoring your request, so let's say you say, "Oh, what a beautiful day it is," and your partner is reading the newspaper and they don't respond to you at all, that would be a good example of turning away or ignoring the request for a connection. On the other hand, hopefully none of you are experiencing this, but research finds that this tends to happen sometimes. You might also be met with a response that turns against you. And so let's say that you come out in the morning and say, "Boy, what a beautiful day it is." And your partner responds by saying something like, "I'm trying to read here, okay?" in response to you saying what a gorgeous day it is. Turning against someone is the most destructive type of response. because what it does is it meets the partner's request for attention with a hostile response, which basically rejects the emotional bid for a conversation. We need to think about the way in which we respond to our partners as well in terms of these kinds of emotional bids. And obviously, we want to have relationships where we are positive and affirming and treating our partner with respect and making them feel like a good person. Intriguingly, research has found that spouses' communicative responses to emotional bids, even during mundane conversations, actually can predict marital stability. So even if it's not a particularly riveting conversation you're having about a topic that is extremely important, these kinds of emotional bids tend to influence marital stability over the course of a marriage. And as I said a few moments ago, this work is also related to research that's been done by Evangelesti and Donksky in 1993, and they found that debriefing conversations at the end of the day predicted marital closeness and satisfaction. And so I need to emphasize the importance of having a conversation at the end of the day with your partner about how your day was, debriefing, what were the issues, just so that we can stay on the same page. And if there are big issues that are coming up in someone's work life or social life, then we can also be aware of those. At the beginning of this chapter, we talked about the communication privacy management theory. And I'm going to run through this theory briefly just for your awareness of the specific ideas here. So the assumption behind the communication privacy management theory is that people in relationships have a desire or a need to control private information. And the reason that we have a need to control private information is because when the wrong people have access to private information, we may actually be quite vulnerable. And so this theory suggests that the idea of boundary permeability relates to the degree of access that people have to private information within the relationship. So I gave the example of somebody who has a secret from their partner. In this case, this one particular partner is surrounded by the boundary and has no linkage to the partner, and they have sole ownership over the information. And so in this situation, we would expect decreased closeness in the relationship. Linkages refer to the connections that we form with other people in terms of allowing them to have access to the information that makes us vulnerable. And so if you were keeping a secret from your partner, you obviously would not have linkages or connections created, and you would not be allowing other people inside. Also, ownership deals with access to private information. So clearly, if you are keeping a secret from your partner, then you have sole ownership over the information. And given that this information is private, so there is no boundary permeability because you have not allowed anyone else within the boundary of the information, there are no linkages with regards to the information with your partner, and there is no ownership with regards to the information in your partner. This theory would suggest that a situation like this would predict decreased satisfaction and closeness in a relationship. So, what can we do to be supportive and to express supportive communication? Well, in terms of supportive communication, there are multiple benefits that we are able to derive from being able to express stress with our partner. Having our partners there to help us deal with stressful situations provides multiple benefits. In terms of the benefits of being able to express stress to our partners and to feel supported by our partners, we have better mental well-being. We feel better psychologically when we can talk with someone about some of the problems or challenges that we're dealing with. When we can get support from someone to tell us that we're okay and that things are going to be okay, and here are some things that I can do to help you even. So we get a good benefit in terms of mental well-being from having supportive communication in our environment. Also, there are physical benefits to supportive communication. So, We feel better physically. Perhaps we have better blood pressure because we're not stressed out so much. Perhaps our heart is healthier because we're not anxious because we have someone to support us. So in general, the benefits of supportive communication are very high, and this is one of the reasons why I support all of my students to develop this kind of a dialogue in your romantic and your family relationships, because demonstrating support in relationships goes a long way to increasing closeness, stability, and satisfaction. It's not surprising that increased support in a relationship does also predict marital satisfaction. And this is especially the case when people are going through health or medical treatment. Also, this tends to be the case when women or people are going through pregnancy treatments or pregnancy processes. So the importance of demonstrating support in a marriage are profound. And if you find that your partnership is less supportive than you would like, I encourage you to bring this up as a point of discussion where you can talk very calmly and non-confrontationally with your partner about some of the benefits that support and positive communication and affirmation can have on a relationship and on the health of the people in the relationship. And you can talk about ways that, as a couple, you can work towards redefining your relationship so that you do exhibit more support, more positivity, and more satisfaction. Clearly, if people are more satisfied in their marriages, they will have a more positive view of their partner. Seems very logical and makes a lot of sense. And what's also very striking about people that are satisfied is that there tends to be less of a negative impact when negative information is discussed. So for instance, let's say you are in a very satisfying and supportive marriage or partnership, and you learn that perhaps you've had a death in the family. Granted, a death in the family is always heartbreaking, but it is much more manageable to go through something like this when you have the support of someone that loves you and is there for you. Also, we could look at things that are taking place at work. So many people are losing their jobs. They're not able to find work in this economic climate. Having a partner there that is supportive, that believes in you, that affirms you, that goes a long way in terms of decreasing the negative impact of these kinds of negative events or negative information that may take place. It's also important to talk about the ways in which cognition, or psychology and perception, influence our satisfaction in relationships. I discussed this previously on one of the first slides for this lecture, so I will go into this theory with a little less detail, but nonetheless, it's important to lay out the role of cognition in terms of satisfaction. So, there are several factors that Pearson discovered influence satisfaction in a relationship. One of these things is lower expectations and unconditional love. So, you might not expect your partner to be perfect, even though they may be perfect for you. And perhaps you treat your partner with unconditional acceptance and unconditional love. What that means is that you do not use ultimatums or make them feel as if your love is conditional upon their performance of a certain behavior. Another thing that Pearson found is that people who are satisfied in their marriages tend to engage in positive distortion, or they look at their partner through rose-colored glasses. Now, looking at your partner through rose-colored glasses basically means that you tend to view them more positively than they are. And although it may seem like this is somewhat of a way that people might be an illusion about others, it's very good to have positive or rose-colored glasses when you view your partners, because what it enables you to do is it enables you to overlook the little things, and it also allows you to overlook things that may cause you to be hypercritical. And since we've been talking about the importance of positive communication and satisfaction, obviously, if you have positive distortion towards your partner and you view them with rose-colored glasses, then you are more likely to communicate with them in positive ways as well, which will lead to more satisfaction. It's also important in terms of satisfied marriages that people become one and come together and join a team, if you will, that is working towards common goals as a family unit. But it's also important that people remain autonomous and keep their individuality. And so this points out that in happy marriages, not only do people have to make a commitment to becoming a team, but they also have to make a commitment to maintaining themselves in the relationship. Because if they do not maintain themselves, they run the risk of only becoming one and not having a good sense of self. And not having a good sense of self, obviously, can lead people to feel less satisfied, because if things ever go wrong in the marriage, or if they need support outside of the marriage, that may be difficult for them to develop if they do not have individual friends, people they can talk to, individual interests, and things like that. Another thing that Pearson discovered is that when people are able to cope with conflict effectively and be persistent, they tend to be satisfied. This is one of the reasons why I emphasize the importance of all of us learning how to have calm, respectful, conflict conversations with our family members and our partners. If we can figure out a way to talk about things that are difficult with the people we love without making them feel bad or without driving wedges between our relationships, then we are much more likely to endure through conflicts in a positive way, and in fact conflicts may actually end up bringing us together because we can learn that we can make it through things. Also, persistence, or the commitment to the relationship, the commitment to stick it out, the ability to stay with it even when it's difficult, that also seems to be related to satisfying and stable marriages. And of course, sexual satisfaction is also related to satisfaction in the marriage. Emotional regulation is a major part of a satisfying marriage. because emotional regulation allows us to care for and nurture our families and our partners in the way that they need to be, and it also allows us to manage our emotions when we are dealing with conflict. Typically speaking, emotional work tends to deal with caring, nurturing, supporting, and things like that. What research has found is that men actually tend to exhibit more of a benefit from marriage than women do. Women actually tend to get less of a benefit from marriage. So remember in an earlier chapter, I discussed the fact that for men, being married tends to predict longer life, better health, and all of these other factors that they benefit from just by the fact that they're married. However, for women, their health, in terms of a marriage benefit, is only going to take place if they are happy in the marriage. So women are only going to receive health benefits, psychological benefits, other social benefits from a marriage if they are happy and content in the marriage. So clearly we see that there is a discrepancy between the experiences that men and women have in their marriages, and it leads us to ask the question, does the fact that women are mostly the caregivers in society influence the way in which they experience marriage? Think about it. If you're in a home and you're married or with your partner and you have children, and the first thing that you think about every day are your children being healthy, being taken care of, getting their homework done, getting to the doctor, going to the sports they have to do, right? Having play dates so they can be socialized, eating healthy so you can prepare those healthy meals, which also takes time and energy, right? And then you think about your partner, and you think about all the things that your partner needs to be happy. So you want to try to be supportive of your partner. You want to try to make sure that you provide for them in terms of nurturing and healthy food in the house, right? You want to be there intellectually for your partner so they can discuss things with you. You want to be there sexually for your partner so that you can experience intimacy and closeness, right? All of these types of work involve caring and nurturing emotional work. And given that women tend to assume or be placed in the role of caregiver, we have to ask ourselves, how does that tendency influence a woman's ability to be truly satisfied in the marriage? And this is one of the reasons why many modern psychologists are suggesting that people who are egalitarian in their relationship style tend to be better off. So an egalitarian marriage or relationship is one where people see themselves as partners, where both people participate equally in terms of caring for the house, caring for the children, dealing with finances. It's really a true sense of the word partnership. So the reason that many modern psychologists are suggesting that an egalitarian marriage is the most stable and satisfying is because of the fact that women are not being pegged into this caregiving position where in some situations they really are putting everyone else before them. When you are putting everybody else in the house before you, it significantly detracts in terms of your ability to give yourself what you need to take good care of your emotional and psychological and physical well-being, and also ultimately to really care for your family. So the best thing that women can do is to take care of themselves to the best of their ability, and then take care of their families to the best of their ability. In terms of relationships and emotional regulation, some research has suggested that men tend to be less caring, oriented, and perhaps less committed to their family and their partner than many women are. And perhaps this plays a role in terms of women and how they experience marriage. However, generally speaking, people who are in partnerships where both people are committed and caring and nurturing in the relationship, those are going to be the marriages that are the most satisfying and stable. Now, women tend to express themselves more than men, and this is probably not a surprise to any of you. Many of you may be thinking of your female friends and trying to compare them to your male friends and thinking, boy, it's like night and day when I have a conversation with, this particular friend versus the other. So women do tend to express more and discuss more detail in terms of both positive and negative information. And what's also interesting about emotional regulation in the marriage is that people who tend to be oriented towards positive affect, so let's say they tend to be more of a positive person, they tend to have an upbeat personality, they're usually in a good mood, right? They tend to talk about things in a more positive way. These types of people, not surprisingly, also tend to have better marriages and marriages that are much happier and satisfying. Sexual intimacy is also another major component of a satisfying partnership. And of course, as soon as children are brought into a partnership, there lies the family life that many people dream of, but there also lies the increased time demands, which take away from the ability of adults to have sexual intimacy time together when there are so many responsibilities and there are children around all the time, and so, obviously it gets more difficult to have this kind of experience as time goes on and as family life gets more complicated. So, it's not surprising that over the course of a marriage, there tends to be a decrease in sexual activity. And although there is a decrease in sexual activity, there tends to be more understanding about what it is that your partner likes over time in a relationship. So although they may be having less sex, people who are in longer relationships actually tend to have better sex than people who are just starting out in their relationship. About 40% of people who are married express that they feel sexually and emotionally satisfied. And about 40% of married people say that they have sex about twice a week. That tends to be the norm in terms of sexual activity. And many of these issues must be compared to single life sexual activity because there tends to be the myth that single people have more sex than married people. But the actual truth is that married people tend to have a lot more sex than single people. So we can look at the fact, for instance, that although 40% of married people have sex at least twice a week, 25% of single people have sex twice a week. So the Sex in the City myth of people going out several nights a week and sowing their wild oats with lots of different partners actually tends to be more of a myth than actual truth. Your book talks about the sexual trends in the U.S., and they refer to a recent study done, well, not that recent now, but it was done in 1994, and it was quite a large sample size that they had in this study, and it was conducted by Lauman, Gogman, Michael, and Michaels, and this included 3,500 face-to-face interviews with a random sample of men and women between 18 and 59. And as I said before, married individuals have more sex than non-married individuals, so about 40% of marrieds have sex at least twice a week, compared with 25% of singles. And just to distinguish this information a little bit more, a small percentage of both men and women reported having sex 4 or more times a week. That was about 7%. About a third reported having sex 2 to 3 times a week. That was about 32% of women and 36% of men. And the greatest majority reported having sex a few times a month. That was 47% of women and 43% of men. And another small percentage reported having sex a few times a year. This was 12% of women and 13% of men. And a very small minority reported never having sex with their partners. And this included 3% of women and 1% of men. So, this research tends to point out that married folks obviously have more sex than single folks, and it also points out the fact that Marriage may influence the frequency with which people have sex on the side where it decreases. So as you are married over time, sex decreases. However, it points out that because you know your partner better over time, the quality of the sex increases. And it's probably not surprising to any of us that men tend to do more of the sexual initiation than women do. We could look at this from a biological perspective in terms of the need that men have to sort of, procreate. We could also look at it from more of a sociological standpoint. So women perhaps are seen as the gatekeepers to these kinds of activities. However, these trends are very interesting, and they do suggest intriguing things about the life of a marriage and the life of sexuality within a marriage. And it also points out the importance of sex in a highly satisfying relationship.